At the end of part two, Glaucon had issued this challenge that it seems like justice is something that's desired for its consequences, but not for its own sake. And Socrates said that maybe we need to investigate justice on an ideal state, this larger scale. And we're continuing to explore that in book two, and then we'll do a really quick overview of book three in this video. So what is justice continues to be our question. And again, Glaucon had made that claim that it looks like justice is not going to be something desired for its own sake. But Socrates had argued that justice belongs in that second category. It is something that's sought for its consequences as well as for itself. So it is a very good kind of good. And so in order to really focus on the nature of justice, Plato is starting to look at a just city-state. And he starts small and then he expands. So we have, if you're going to create a city-state, a governing body with people cooperating, you need individuals to fulfill various roles. And if you don't have some specialization occurring, which would be best, you're going to run into problems. I mean, imagine going to Bill's office and Bill says, you know, I give you personal attention, so all the services that I provide are provided by me. And then these are the services that he's providing. And as you look at those, I can imagine that you don't really trust that Bill's going to be great at any of these things. I mean, I don't think I want to go get a massage from someone who also does taxidermy and heavy equipment rental. And I don't think I want to have my tax returns done by someone who does tattoos and small engine repair. And I'm not really comfortable getting a loan from someone who does footwear design or hair and nail styling. So this doesn't seem to be the best way to get these things done. And if you have people who desire these things, it is clearly best to have specialized roles. Now, Plato doesn't go on and talk about individual jobs like I was listing there that Bill might perform, but instead, there are three groups of people, three specialized roles that somebody's going to fit into one of these three broad categories. So we have one broad category is the craftsman. Now, these are people who also can make money. These are people who make things like shoes, buy and sell things. These are the farmers. These are the ones who build houses and so on. A second group are the people who are the guardians, and these are soldiers, the auxiliary class, as it's sometimes called. And so these are going to be people who can protect other people, both within the city-state and from intruders from outside the city-state. And then finally, there are ruler guardians. These are a subset of this second group. And the ruler guardians, of course, are going to make the laws and oversee the functioning of the city-state. So a question is, how do we train those who are in the auxiliary class? How do you train the soldiers, the ones who are protecting the city-state? And Plato says, well, one thing, you should note that they should be like a watchdog. A good watchdog can recognize foes and is very threatening to them, but is friendly to the people who live in the house, right? So soldiers should be the same. They should be able to recognize enemies and people who are causing problems, but be friendly with the citizens of the state who are doing their jobs. So the soldiers, though, although they're spirited, that part of the soul that is spirited, the thymus, transliterated from the Greek, or it would have been pronounced thumus probably, they can't be dominated by their spirit. They don't, you don't want somebody that's ready to fight constantly. They have to have wisdom, wisdom to determine when to fight and when not to fight. And so Plato calls for a change in how we educate these people. So this would apply both to the class of soldier guardians, but it would also apply to the ruling class as well. And one of the things, broadly speaking, when it comes to religious upbringing, Plato is explicitly calling for a change. So unlike Socrates, we have Plato in the Republic saying, yes, we do need to change what we have to say about the gods. The gods should not be thought of as vengeful or jealous or driven by emotions as they are often described in the poetry. So we need to change that. We don't want people who are jealous and vengeance and driven by emotions. We want people who are wise and reasonable. And so with religious upbringing, God should be thought of as simple, as truthful, as unchanging. It may or may not be plural here, but the idea is you want a God to be someone that you would want to be like, right? Someone you want to emulate, not someone who causes trouble like many of the traditional Greek gods would. Now, very briefly, I want to just hit some highlights of book 3. So related to what we were just talking about with religious upbringing, there is a censorship of sorts of poetry that Plato recommends. We need to go through and cut out the parts of the poems that are available to people broadly and not expose them to these people who have many vices and seem to succeed with their vices. So the poems have to be rejected, at least much of them, because they glamorize people who are ruled by their thymus, by their spirited part, the people who can be violent and get away with it, you know, the heroes who are vengeful and jealous. So we want to get rid of that, says Plato. And along with that, we shouldn't have poems that mention Hades and all the horrible things that might happen to someone, because that increases our fear of death. And Plato says, look, we don't know what lies after death, so we shouldn't have reason to fear it. We don't want to encourage people to fear it. For one, especially amongst the soldier class, the auxiliary class, think of policemen would fall in this category as well. You want them to be brave. You don't want them to fear death so much that they become cowardly in their actions. And truth should be honored, right? Truth should be respected. We want to teach everyone to speak the truth, but there might be a little exception to this. Lying is likened to medicine. So medicine in the hands of a physician can be very helpful, but you really have to know how to use it, right? And you don't want people just broadly have access to any medicine a physician might prescribe, because they're going to take the wrong thing at the wrong time and cause more harm than good. So lying is kind of like that. You want all the general people, the craftsmen and the auxiliary class, generally speaking, to speak truth at all times, but you might have some rulers, ruling class people, who are able to have honorable, good deceptions that would be helpful for the city-state. So what are we talking about? Where there's a myth of the metals, for example, that's described that people are just born with certain kinds of elements in their soul. So there are people with golden souls, and they are supposed to be the ruler guardians. And there are people with silver souls, and they're supposed to be the auxiliary class and the soldiers and the police. And there are those people with bronze souls, and those are the craftsmen and the people who work with their hands and make money and interchange. So people are just born that way, and they need to function that way within their class. Now, it is possible for two people who are members of the gold, have the gold souls to have an offspring who doesn't. And it's possible that two people with bronze souls has an offspring who has a silver soul. So they belong in a different task. They should be doing different things. Okay, part 4, we'll look at book 4, and we're going to explore more details of the qualities of the ideal state, and then we'll relate that to justice on an individual level.